what's happening here to the public at home and to the board.
I don't know if people know how this.
Attorney Noto, I don't see him here right now, wanted to have some comments on this as well. But let me just open up for any other questions from the board. If there's no more questions from the board, what I'm going to do is just table this item for the time being, and we'll come back to it once Town Attorney Noto's here, because I wanted to ask some questions. So with that, why don't we go to the presentation of the 2010 audit report. We have the gentleman here from Sedore, Jim and Jeff. Yeah, please, that works well. Thank you. Guys, just introduce yourselves to the people at home, please.
Thank you, Commissioners. Good evening, everyone. My name is Salanitro, one of the partners from the auditing firm, Sedore and Company CPAs. I'm here with everybody here. Yeah. I'm here with one of my partners, Jeff Graham, who is actually the in-charge auditor and in charge of the preparation of the financial statements for the December 31, 2010 year for the Rye Town Park Commission. And what the commissioners have, you did receive a copy of the financial statements from the town offices prior to this meeting. And there, as you see, draft form, because the commissioners, of course, have to approve the final financial statement. But what we have given to you is a summary. Tom sheet is a summary of the financial statement highlights for the 2010 year. It's customary for us to present the highlights of the financial statements in the interest of time. We find that our municipalities like it this way for your agendas, usually pretty full. We go over the highlights of the financial statements that we audited, and certainly any questions, follow-up questions, we entertain those. And certainly if any questions after this meeting, we will have our number there to contact us. So in the interest of time, Jeff will go through the highlights as we present it. Thank you very much.
Any questions from the board on the, well, sorry, Jeff, you want to continue.
Thanks, Jim. So I'm just going to hit on the highlights sheet I just handed out to you, and you'll notice on that sheet there, I do reference the pages on the audit. So if you want to follow along on the audit or on the highlights, it's up to you. But considering the essence of time, we'll just hit on the highlights. The first bullet point, Commission received an unqualified opinion on the audit report. Unqualified opinion means a clean opinion. There were no qualifications that we had, so it's the best you can get. And also on that first page of the audit report where we give our opinion, it makes mention to, that's management's financial statements. And so actually what your document you're looking at is put together by, with our assistance, but by management, and we've audited it. So really that first page is, goes in our letterhead and it's finalized. So that's our part of the audit there. Just some financial statement highlights. The Commission's government-wide financial statements. Government-wide means it's on a full accrual basis, including the fixed assets. Reflected total assets worth of a little over $4.4 million, of which, as you can see there, almost $4.2 million of it related to fixed assets, which is no depreciation. The total liabilities were $268,120, which largely consisted of the two pillar governments of $196,356, which reflect the amount that the town of Rye advanced to the park at snapshot in time, how much was owed December 31st, 2010, back to the town of Rye. Moving on to some of the revenues and expense highlights. The general fund revenues were $985,000, a little over that for 2010, which did represent $56,507 increase from 2009. So the revenues did go up. However, the 2010 revenues were $78,338 less than budgeted revenue, so it did fall short of the budget. Now, the general fund expenses were $1,084,434 in 2010, which went up by about $50,000 when compared to 2009 expenses of $1,034,153. sponsor funding, which is the sponsor of the town and the city. For 2010, the sponsor funding in the general fund, so for the operation, the deficit, the net loss for the year was $99,074, which the town contributed $50,163 of it, and the city contributed $48,913. Now, just to compare that to 2009 numbers, the overall sponsor funding amount for 2009 was $105,300, in which the town contributed $54,140, and the city contributed $51,160. So it's very similar to the 2009 numbers, but also it's about $6,000 less. I just wanted to hit on the park, the capital project fund, because we did the major roof renovation over at the park in 2010, and which is broken out separately in the financial statements under that capital project fund, because the capital project fund, the funding ratio of it, of course, is different than the operations ratio of it. So that's why all that is segregated. One of the reasons why all that is segregated on the financial statements themselves. So just to hit on the park completed the renovations, the total capital project expenses was $1.4 million. And of those total expenses, the town contributed sponsor funding of almost $611,000. The city contributed $385,000. Probably wonder what the difference is between that. There were a couple of grants in there that the park received for the work, which made up the difference between the total expenses and the revenue, the funding from the city and the town.
I had a question on that. So is that obligation complete now? Is that fund closed and everything's paid?
As of 2010, no, which is why it's outstanding there. It's not closed as of December 31st, 2010, but we haven't looked at like today. So I can't speak up as of today. Sorry, Bishop.
Yeah, I can update the commissioners. There is a $20,000 outstanding receivable from the state of New York. They are insisting that we provide a grant audit, if you will, before they will release the final 10% of the funds. So Sedore has been developing that and putting that document together. So we will file that. As soon as we file the audited numbers, at that particular point, we will get the $20,000. All of the actual expenses, the bills, vendors, invoices, and so forth, have been paid.
And the last bullet point just notes that in the footnotes, it does provide additional detail to what I just spoke of for the financial statement highlights. As Jim said, we'd be happy to take any questions that you have on the park audit report.
I just thought you were going to go through your recommendations.
Okay.
Right? Yeah. Right.
So just to touch on the management letter, which you should have a copy in front of you as well. Okay, I'm just going to go through this rather quickly. The first section of the management letter is there's three different types of findings. There's material weaknesses, which we had none for the town, which is the worst of the three types of findings. There's significant deficiencies, which the definition is in the letter, which basically says it merits the, it's not as severe as a material weakness, but less than what they call a control deficiency. So those are broken out in section 140, which I'll talk about, and then section 2, where it says other control and compliance matters. That's considered control deficiencies, which is the least of the three as far as findings go. So just for brief, just want to give you a little description so that was clear. Just to breeze through the findings. The finding number 1 talks about financial statement adjustments. Anytime we have to make an adjustment as an auditor, so what's provided to us, what we receive from the Park Commission, where if it's a material adjustment, we're required to put this finding in. So it's very common with our municipalities a lot of times that we do have this. So we, as you see here, we noted a few different items where we had to adjust as part of the year-end audit. The opening fund balance, the capital improvements, which replaced the roof project, the sponsor funding, and the due to the town Ryan and due from the city Ryan, as well as the due to from the capital fund. So we we made adjustments. Those adjustments are all reflected in these financial statements that you have right there. The second finding is the capital projects fund. And really what this gets to is having a separate general ledger to track the capital projects fund. It is being tracked, but it's kind of, at this point in time, it's being, on the accounting software used by the park, it's being called like intermingled with what the general fund is, so we have to segregate it out separately. So that's basically what this finding recommends, is you're revising the chart of accounts to make sure everything is reflected separately, since there's different funding percentages. Yes?
Since you have different funding percentages, and you really have two taxing authorities that are funding that, what is your experience with working across governments? I mean, because this number is not really slotted into City of Rye's capital fund balance. Do you have a recommendation how that should work?
As far as like what the City of Rye should budget then for?
Well, no, how do you coordinate, if it's coming from two entities, but it's rolled up in this one report, how do you coordinate between the two municipalities?
As far as like who's funding what, the sponsoring percentage, is that?
Right.
Well, we did, as far as we put out, it was pretty easy, because Sam did have segregated into a capital improvement account, which listed all the funds for this park, for the roof project. So since it was a project in itself, the scope of it was pretty, spelled out in detail. So as far as us tracking it, I mean, basically, on an ongoing basis, if we have a separate capital fund set up, you'd be able to see it more at your meetings themselves, and you could see like, which I don't know, maybe you do get that at your monthly meeting.
Well, it seems like it's a reconciliation at the end, right?
What happened was the project only lasted 4 months, 5 months, okay? By the time we even had all the activity in the general ledger, I had set up 2 separate accounts. I had set up a capital improvement account, and I set up all the liabilities that were associated with it. So if we set up a completely new general ledger to track something that was going to last 3 months, it didn't make sense at that point. If we had an ongoing capital projects, 5-year plan, then that would be different. Then we would definitely keep track of a separate capital fund for any unexpended money that would, you would normally set up a capital fund if we were putting like $50,000 a year in, like we talked about, and whatever we didn't spend went unspent, and we create a fund balance. There was no fund balance. It was all going to get funded by the 2 municipalities. So at the time, I knew there wasn't going to be any hangover, carryover. That's why we did it that way.
But even if it's zero, we should have a separate capital fund, right, that we can track against for projects that come up.
Well, I sort of had it internally in the general ledger. Was it broken out exactly the way they wanted to see it? No. But I knew I had segregated all the capital money.
Going forward, I'm saying. We should have.
If we fund it, that's not a problem.
Well, even if we fund it with $1, right? At least we've got the accounting mechanism.
That would be the way to do it.
Right.
Fund it with $100, and then we'd have actual dollars to look towards.
Right. Okay.
That's fine.
Excuse me, have you guys done an audit on this commission before? Is this your first audit?
No, we've been doing the audit for a couple of years now.
Is there anything on a prior recommendation that hasn't been fulfilled?
Well, some of these findings, like the first finding, the financial statement adjustments, that's on a year-by-year basis if we make adjustments. So yes, that's been there.
And a classic example of what happened was when I did the interest expense, which created this $140,000 projected loss, they reworked it based on conversations I had with them. The way I was handling the capital money was incorrect. So that's where we came in with an audit adjustment. That would be a material change to my number. There was a change to the unemployment insurance number, I think, and a couple other items. So considering the magnitude of the dollars, they consider a material effect. But it brought the numbers down, okay? So that's what, just amplify what Jeff was telling me.
Okay.
So to answer your question, sir, the procurement policy on finding one, we had that was in there last year as well. I think that's pretty much it as far as what was in there last year. The cash disbursements, we update each year based on our testing each year that we do with it. But yes, that was in there as well. And some of the same things applied, some are a little different, but yeah, that was in there last year as well.
With that, I'm sorry, you want to go?
Go ahead.
With the analysis you did on the 10 samples on the cash, did you conclude exclude anything from that? Do you see any shrinkage in our cash collection process or handling process?
Well,
This was checks being.
yeah, this was the disbursements. We didn't have a problem on the stuff we looked at, because we do testing also on the receipt side as well, the money coming in. But we didn't have any issues with the, with the sampling we did on the receipt side. So this, just to be clear, this is just on the disbursement side of it. And yeah, of the 10, because we do other 10, this is just the purpose of us selecting these 10 is to test your internal controls. And we'll walk through to see, okay, are you following what you say you're going to be doing? So, and it kind of relates back to the first one. First finding this other control matters section, because usually what we do is we compare it to, okay, what do you say in your procurement policy? Are you following what you're saying you're doing in your procurement policy? So that's where the first one comes in, that we don't have a official procurement policy, although unofficially you have a policy that you're following. So the disbursements themselves, those exceptions, it's more the internal controls. Some of it is, just notating, as one of them that we had last year, about notating the general ledger account on the actual invoice itself.
I guess the bottom line question is, have we gotten better than we have, are things looking better than they did in the past?
I'd say as far as this
Based on
comment,
2 years.
I'd say it's pretty consistent with the prior year.
Have we responded yet? This is a draft of the findings. Have we responded in writing yet with the draft of how we are going to respond?
We've had an exit conference, we went over it.
Yeah, usually that's the next step, to put something in writing.
We didn't do it last year, we could easily do it this year.
Oh, I just find from the village's point of view, that's our normal course, to put it in writing in this way.
Mayor, normally when there's a state audit, when the state comes down, I don't know what you do with your internal auditors.
We do it, we respond.
Okay.
When there is findings, what we do is we respond,
Yeah, I
what we
think
plan
that's
to do.
not
And I
wrong.
think that would be a good thing to put in writing, and that way we can look back on it so that we can see whether or not there was a commitment and a follow-through for the year.
But just going back to the question on the course of business, is it, you feel that it's important for us to, as a board, have on our agenda audit and approval of bills on a regular basis? Should we be approving and ordering the bills as a pro forma review, if you will?
We didn't officially make that recommendation.
I thought I saw
I
that.
thought I saw that also, that we should be approving bills.
Yeah, that's what I saw.
Basically, the approval of the bills is just, I think we noted that,
That's what I saw, that commission should review and approve.
Should be,
we just want you to lay out whatever procurement policy
Okay.
you have to address that. I mean, we're not telling you that you have to do that. But we want to lay out, we want you to, whatever this commission wants to do with as far as the formal policy, putting that in place with, addressing the approval of the bills, whether that you want to do that at your meetings, or whether you want to, whatever.
Anything that we procure, or we have the thresholds, GML has thresholds for 10,000, 30,000, public works contracts.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's just commission's discretion. Our recommendation is you put it in writing. Let's have a formal document, and then, okay, let's make sure we're following that document.
On the fixed assets, are we going with GASB 34 here?
Yes,
Same project?
GASB 34 compliant. That's why you have the fixed assets. That's why when you look at this, on the government-wide financial statements, which is the full accrual basis, you actually have a fund balance there. Even though when you think about the park, you really don't have a fund balance at the fund financial statement level, but because those are actually Town Park assets, you actually have a fund balance that equals the fixed assets on the government-wide. But on the fund financial statements, you'll see, which is what you normally budget on, that's where the sponsor funding comes into play, and you'll see that your fund balance is zero.
Can you make me understand how you came up with the number, dollar value for the fixed asset of the building, and how liability carries forward since we put a capital investment in there? Does that number on the fixed asset include the capital project that we did, or is that?
Absolutely. That number does absolutely include it. It's all, your fixed assets are all recorded according to generally accepted accounting principles. It's all recorded at historical cost.
Okay.
Basis, so whenever like you're building, like this past year with roof renovations, would have been put on in 2010, and we depreciated over the useful life of that fixed asset.
So is that a replacement value? That's my question.
No, it's not. It is not.
It isn't. Okay, so we can't, reason why I'm asking that, because we haven't had a conversation about value of buildings for tax assessment purposes. I can't use these numbers for that.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, this is totally different than that. This is not replacement cost, fair market value. No, it's all historical cost, less respective accumulated appreciation on that.
Thank you for your answers.
Sure.
I think mention one thing about the test work. Jeff mentioned we did a sample of 10 items, which was very small. In addition to that, we also looked at the expenditures on the capital projects very close to the solar. It's not as if we just looked at these 10 items and nothing else. Just as Jeff said, as part of their discretionary test, with more compliance, see if you're following those policies that you have put in place.
We don't have any policies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We should.
Well, you certainly have certain procedures that we look for in the invoices, of course, and the approvals. Those are the least items you should have.
We generally do follow the purchasing policy of the town of Rye, which does exist, and frankly, we use that as our
Maybe
benchmark.
what we should do is to take a look at that policy and see whether or not it needs to be tweaked at all, or
I'll be glad to forward.
As commission. So therefore, next year, when we have this report, it won't be that we've already taken that and made it as a policy.
I'll be glad to forward a
Great.
copy to all the commissioners.
Thank you.
I know I kind of jumped around there, but is there any other questions that even on the findings
Other questions?
or on the audit?
Okay, well, Jim and Jeff, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And yes, we need to come up with a written set of procedures for Rye Town Park. Bishop and Sam, would you come up with something like that? And I also want a formal response to the questions. Thank you.
Over here, entertain a motion to accept the audit report.
Please, can I get a motion to accept the audit report?
So moved.
Second?
Okay. French,
Yes.
Villa, Feinstein,
Yes.
Salanitro,
Aye.
Sack,
Yes.
Carvin.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I see that Town Attorney Noto's arrived. Town Attorney Noto, you want to talk a little bit about the bar?
Sure. Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you. And as far as the assessment issue, as some of you may be aware, I suspect, the City of Rye, in a somewhat radical departure of prior policy, has now determined that the portion of Rye Town Park known as Seaside Johnny's is now what they're considering to be a taxable portion of the park, and they have placed that portion of the park on the city assessment roll with an assessed value of $23,700. So we feel very strongly that this is an improper exercise of the city's assessment authority, in that it is a public park. It has been. It's a municipal facility. And based on the history, going back to 1907, when the Park Commission was first created, there is statutory authority to have a public restaurant in the Rye Town Park, as there has been in some form probably for the past 50 years. We are also coordinating with the County of Westchester, who have also learned that the premises that we refer to as the Tiki Bar, which is on county property, has also been assessed by the city. So we have coordinated our responses, and we are filing a bar challenge on behalf of the Rye Town Park Commission, and we will also file one on behalf of the town of Rye. Because you as the commissioners are the exclusive authority over the park, I don't believe we could file a challenge without a vote of the commission, because you control everything that goes on at the park. Although the sorry, a question?
No, I'll continue
Okay.
at the end.
Okay,
Sorry.
so I think as a prudent measure, we would ask that the commission authorize the filing of the challenge. It is obviously a little awkward, since two members of the commission are elected officials in the city of Rye, but it is what it is. So we have had situations like this in the past. I know that because city of Rye residents would in fact pay a portion of these taxes, but
the city assessor and corporation counsel have been very nice. I mean, they're very professional, and they have responded to our inquiries. And in fact, they suggested to us that we, as part of our bar challenge, request a hearing with the city Board of Assessment Review, which we will do, and that they would schedule one just for us as a county so that we could meet with them and discuss the issues. So, that being said, and then not everybody does that, so we appreciate the fact that the city has at least accepted the fact that other municipalities are concerned about it and would like to make a case for the exemption that we've always had for the last 100 years, I guess, right? Since 1907. More than 100 years.
I have two questions, Paul. Number one, and I guess maybe I can ask Mayor French, the assessment of $23,000, what does it translate to in actual dollars based upon the tax rate? Do you know the idea? Okay, that was, I was just curious.
We don't know. It's
Roughly times 50, I think the equalization rate is about
I don't know what it is.
1.97 or something like that.
Okay, that's the answer to that. And number two, I understand that this has been the course of dealing, but what type of case law is there out there? Have you reviewed any, just out of curiosity, to determine whether or not public property is being used for a private purpose or for a, I want to say not for a profit?
Well,
is there some challenged case law on that?
There have been. I mean, there have been some cases. The town of Harrison has had some unfortunate experiences with the hangars up at the county airport, which were assessed, and the town lost and had to pay. I know the city has had some rough experiences with the Osborne, which is a pretty landmark, fairly significant decision that the city of Rising was involved in. We do have some case law that is in our favor, that this has been it is a municipal property. For example, they don't tax the concessions at Playland. Part of the factual pack, the fact-based discussion would be, is the restaurant, customary and ordinary to the use of the park? Is it something that's a normal, pertinent to the park? We think it is, obviously, because it's always been selling hot dogs there, has always been available to patrons. Is it necessary for the use of the park? And we believe it is, that people go to the park, and as part of the enjoyment of the park, it brings people to the park that they get to eat while they're there, as opposed to not being able to eat all day or having to go off premises to go find food during the day. So there is a lot of case law. A lot of it is in our favor, but not all of it. So, look, I'm assuming the city's done their homework as well, and they feel they have a case. I'm not going to describe any bad motives to the city of Rye, but I understand the need for revenue. But we think that not just the amount of money at stake here, but the precedent it sets, and for the future. We do have a license agreement with Seaside Johnny's, and I think one of the issues that had come up was with the county, there is a license agreement with the Tiki Bar, and in that license agreement, I believe it says that if there are taxes, the Tiki Bar has to pay. As you know, this license agreement that we have with Seaside Johnny's, which dates back many, many years, long before all of your terms in office here, and it extends to 2016. There is no such provision. So, where, for example, the city seeking additional revenue, when we renegotiate that contract in 2016, that might be a time for the commission to say to the vendor, look, we feel the city needs compensation for this, and in lieu of an assessment, we would agree on some sort of pilot. But this is the time, because we're locked into that agreement for another 5 years. So. At this point, our position is we're going to oppose it and then see where it goes. And the outcome of that will determine whether or not we want to pursue something, proceed with Seaside Johnny's. But in fairness, their license agreement does not provide any taxes, and we do pay the ad valorem tax. Yes, sir.
Paul, is it a question on the next step? Obviously, going to the BAR on a complaint. After that, would be a recommendation to file a SCAR or go for Article 7.
No, it'd be an Article 7 as far as a residential.
Okay, that's true.
That would definitely be an Article 7. And like I said, we're working very closely with the county and the county attorney's office, and in fact, they've done a lot of the research, for which I'm grateful, and the attorney for Seaside Johnny's, Mr. Kraft. So we've actually